I'm going to introduce our next speaker, guys, so come on in, sit down. This is next to last, and we're almost done for the night. I know it's a sad day. It's a sad time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you can join me in welcoming our next speaker. Anyone not get one of these things? These are great, aren't they? I mean, I don't know if we have any left, but they're really awesome. I mean, one of my staff came up with this idea 2 years ago, and we've been doing this ever since. You can just like turn it over, and all you need is the Hubble telescope or a microscope to read it. But if you have really good eyes, it's really great. So Robert Anderson is our next speaker. He's a former intelligence officer with the US Army, and he's been an instructor for SOCOM Intelligence Training. And he's got some really interesting topics and a lot of experience in the topics that he's about to talk about. So the title of his talk is U.S. Interrogation Techniques and Social Engineering. So join me in welcoming Robert Anderson.
Thank you, Chris. Really hard to follow Chris after an event like this, but I appreciate it, and I'm very honored actually to be here in front of you, and thank you very much. I hope you find what I'm about to tell you, educational, and that you'll be able to adapt and apply it, in the course of work that you're doing right now, because I think it's very important. A little background, former intelligence officer. I was in the US Army Interrogation School. I also went through the Israeli Interrogation School, and then after a couple years became a senior instructor for the U.S. Army for interrogation. I've conducted a bunch of missions all over. 20 years, I actually, my first computer experience was an Apple II with the Army, and they had this, green screen and basically connected to the 33-inch disc for gathering and monitoring intelligence. And then I bought my Macintosh when they first came out, and we used a lot of different computers at that time. I've been in the IT cybersecurity field for over 15 years. You can find me on Facebook under Elvis, and my other handle is the Mantis. What I just found, as I became more and more involved in IT and cybersecurity, and the whole vectors and the whole attacks coming through social engineering, and of course trying to stay up in the field as a professional, I saw just some complementary things about what I learned in interrogation school and the techniques that social engineers use, in order to display their craft. It's comparable, it's congruent, it's corresponding. To me, they kind of share some DNA. I kind of think of them as Irish twins. They're not quite exactly the same, but they're close enough for you to go, they must be related somehow. The interrogation school is probably some of the most comprehensive training, I've ever been through. It was really, really thorough. It's conducted at US Intel School down in Fort Huachuca. We called it Fort We Gotcha. And there's a lot of intelligence training that goes on in that fort. The overall interrogation program itself, let me see, I'm coming out of college. My background's in Near East history and languages. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I thought I was going to go to Harvard and, get my PhD and become a professor and, read Ugarit and Hebrew and Arabic all day long to people. But then this recruiter came to me and said, we could really use someone like you. And I was like, how? And he started going over what they were doing and talked about the interrogation school. And I was like, well, I'm really not into hurting people and bamboo shoots and, all that stuff. So I'm not so cool about that. Then he said, well, we're going to train you in Arabic, and then we're going to send you overseas to travel all the time. And I was like, okay, I'm into that. I want to learn another language. I love travel. The overall program itself, just the interrogation trainings, used to be 6 months. When I went through it was 6 months. Now they've shortened it a little bit. Then when I took the training, we were given a targeted language, for various countries. The leading target areas are pretty much the same right now. Middle East, China, and Russia. We first started out doing just classic book learning and understanding the different techniques and getting tested on those, every day. There was a test on a certain technique and a certain approach. And so it was a lot of book learning. And then after that, we had a 2-hour prep, and then we were in a 3-hour lab in an actual mock interrogation with a variety of different type of sources, as we call them, targets, as social engineers call them. Everything was recorded. So my whole 3-hour interrogation with anybody was always recorded. And then we'd go back, and the instructors would take me through my recording of that last interrogation. This went on 5 days a week for like 4 months. It was very, very intense. And if you can imagine learning something, by the book, and then actually doing it, and then watching yourself do it, and then other interrogators watching you go through it, just the feedback and the input just made it a phenomenal, incredible training session. There's a final test. The last interrogation, of course, was brutal. So it was a lot of stress. But again, it helped me in a lot of areas in life. Just understanding people, reading people, and I'll get into more of that here in a bit. Overall, interrogation training, they train us in all facets of intelligence. There are intelligence analysts, that gather information and review information. There are what you guys know as SIGINT intelligence that, deal with signals, coming out of the NSA. And the Army had its own little group that did that in a tactical fashion if they were actually going into the battlefield. But all that still was fed up to NSA. So we train in all facets of intelligence, counterintelligence and things like that. We're looking at, because we had to prep, we had to have this training so we would understand what other information was available to us before I went into an interrogation, so I could have all the information I needed to actually prep and learn about what's going on with this particular individual or team or whatever. So it was some really good training. And of course, there was computers. You guys probably heard a lot about interrogators over the last 10 years since 9/11 and Abu Ghraib and Gitmo and all that. It's changed. It's called a military occupational specialty. Many of you may have been in the military. It's an MOS. When I first came in the Army, it was a 96 Charlie, and they were called interrogators of prisoners of war. But then they thought that was too abrasive, I guess, and they turned us into 97 Echoes, and they called us interrogator translator. So they kind of a little nicer. And then after Abu Ghraib and all the investigations and senators talking about POWs and what we did, and it was ugly at Abu Ghraib. And I can imagine if Chris or any other speakers here could tell you that, hey, if you torture your target, you're probably going to not get a lot of information out of them. And that's exactly true. So the Abu Ghraib was a horrible incident. So after that, they completely changed it and removed the name interrogator from the whole thing, and now they're just human intelligence collectors. The field manuals changed as well. All of these are available online. It's a really good source for Daesh and ISIS and anybody else to go out there and go, oh, here's the actual interrogation techniques they're going to use on us. Oh, okay. So it's you can get all this online. It's one way of operating, I guess. Once you become an interrogator, sometimes you're involved in a couple different areas. You might do a tactical interrogation, during a conflict, like the ones that are going on now, or you might be, and that's basically information that's 24 to 48 hours. You're trying to get it right away because something's going on and you want to make sure you get that information right away. So you use different approaches and techniques to gain that information. The other program you might go into would be called a strategic debriefer. And that would be, let's say someone is trying to immigrate to the United States and, he's coming from Iran and he used to work at the airport in construction, and we would ask them, we had a whole different objective for that, and we would want to know, well, tell us about, what kind of concrete was used, what was poured. So then we gather that kind of intelligence and we know what kind of concrete they use on the airport, so we need this type of bomb to take the airport out. So that'd be the role of a strategic debriefer. And then there was psychological operations, PSYOPs. They take our skills and they use those to, do a lot of different things. Some things, disinformation to try to throw the enemy off. The PSYOPs unit they would go into a country and they could set up a TV station, a radio station, a newspaper, and then within 24 hours start broadcasting on the radio and on TV, intercepting a TV signal, sending out propaganda over that signal. And then they could, of course, you've heard of leaflet dropping and things like that, so they could do a lot of that. The area of PSYOPs is, kind of interesting because it's changed too. That doesn't sound like a very friendly name, so that's become a whole new name basically for collection of information. So they're trying to make all these roles and tactics appear to be nicer, which is not working, but. So when I first found out, and I said this enticing thing about being an interrogator and all the movies we've watched and all the stuff that, we used to see, and, I was thinking the bamboo shoots and, the rack and, whatever. Never heard of waterboarding when I was in college, so I had no idea what that was. Walk into the class, and there's like 6 instructors, and they come in, and the lead instructor comes in, and there's 16 of us in class. And he comes in, we have one objective here, and that is to teach you how to lie. And imagine having 6 months of training on how to lie. And, it's the whole basis of what many, all social engineering is about. You go in, you're trying to be somebody, you're pretexting, you're role-playing, and you're basically lying from the get-go. So that was kind of interesting to me to kind of, understand that now we're going to learn how to lie very effectively. Now, this kind of gets into the meat of what I'm talking about, because these are the approaches that we would use and we were trained on, for, over and over again, just so we would know how to really understand what is the best approach by reading our source, looking at that body language, looking at, different things, speech patterns and stuff like that. Very similar to what Chris was just talking about. The direct approach is pretty much as it is. I mean, you walk in. Imagine if you have ever imagined, we could have some POWs in here, I don't know. But if you get caught and you're in a conflict and you're caught by the enemy, imagine the fear that you have, being in that situation. It's pretty hard to comprehend. I've never been in that situation. I've been in simulations, but never been in the real thing. And so, many, many times, just walking up and doing the direct approach, they don't care. They're so afraid they're going to give you everything. And it's just, you try that approach first, and maybe another interrogator tries that approach first. You get whatever information you can, or someone resists you, and then you go, okay, we're going to try a different approach. Incentive approach. Basically, hey, we're going to give you this if you give us this. We'll give you, better sleeping conditions, better food, cleaner water, all that stuff. So incentives to basically bribe them to give us information. Emotional approaches, kind of get, they're a little more interesting, because you really have to understand your source, and you really have to build a rapport with him or her. And I haven't interrogated many women, but men especially, it's a little bit different approach you want to use. You have to adjust to, their culture. You have to adjust to, their particular circumstance. You learn about, where they were captured, what they were captured with, what unit they were with, and then you use that to figure out ways to get information out of them. And that's all we want to do, which is the same thing a social engineer does. I want information. How can I get it in the most effective, efficient way? So you can imagine someone comes in and they're really scared, out of their wits, and an emotional love approach, really works a lot. And these positive approaches are probably more conducive to social engineering because, like I said, the negative ones, work in some instances, but most of the time it's a positive approach on the social engineering side. So, showing someone, you can imagine when you're in a situation that you might be as a POW, just to feel a kind touch, on your shoulder. Just, as opposed to thinking, this guy's going to beat the crap out of me. Using that approach is very, very effective with, many people in that kind of situation. Historically, a lot of the things we've been dealing with right now have been dealt with, very strong emotional hate. So you can use that approach if you have the right follow-up to gain the information. And it's very effective if someone, for some reason decides they're not as afraid as we thought they were, and they try to, be a little more upfront about, their feelings about whatever conflict's going on or whatever the situation is. So we use that lightly when it's necessary, because you're not going to get information out of someone, if all they're spewing is hate and, fear out, as you just try to bang down on them hard. And I'm not saying physically, I'm talking emotionally and verbally. Or it's, a tag team approach where you have several different interrogators going after a source to get the information. Emotional fear up, same thing. You want to increase the fear. And there's a variety of ways we would do that. We would, do that through various threats, various intimidation techniques, and things like that. But again, all emotional. There's no physical abuse whatsoever in this. I'll get into some of the physical stuff that we were permitted, by whatever law or by training, to do. Because again, you want accurate information that's timely, and fear doesn't necessarily, bring that out of a person in the most accurate way. Emotional fear down, again, is when we see how scared they are. We know how scared they are, and we're trying to do everything to calm them down and to assure them, that we're not going to hurt them, that we're going to take care of them. We tell them, hey, we're going to feed you, clothe you, you're going to get you back to your family as soon as, we can work out whatever process we need to. So, please, calm down. We want to take care of you. Emotional pride, ego up. Basically, you're trying to build somebody up. And this really works well as a social engineer. When you walk in and talk to the receptionist and you're like complimenting her or, being nice to the security guard because he's a Eagles fan, even though you're a Cowboys fan, even though I'm a Niners fan. So that ego up, social engineers use, all the time. Once in a while, we'll use ego down, where you want to, use your so-called pretext and your role playing in a position. Listen, the CEO is expecting me, and that doesn't happen. I would hate to put in a bad word about you. So those kinds of areas, they work. They're probably not the most effective way, even for social engineers, to utilize that technique, to really put the fear of God in someone or use that authority and somehow to, abuse them in some way. Emotional futility, probably, basically that's where we're telling the source that, there is no hope. You are done. You're going to be a prisoner of war, for a very, very long time, and we just make his position look futile, so that basically he or she gives up and says, okay, here's what I know. There's nothing I can do anyway, so I'm just going to tell you. Other approaches, which a lot of social engineers can use as well, one, the we know all approach is when you basically are telling your target, that source, hey, we know your unit, we know you were here, we know you were going after this, and, we already talked to your friends and they already spilled. So, go ahead and tell us, because we already know it all anyway. If you cooperate, we'll be kinder to you in your circumstances here right now. So it's an excellent approach because it again kind of plays on the futility approach. We already know everything, but we need to know you cooperate. If you don't, and basically we're writing everything down to record, even though we may not know anything. File and dossier approach. This is kind of a role-playing approach where you walk in, you have a bunch of papers and stuff, and you throw them down on the desk, and you're talking to the source, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, what's all this?" And you kind of shuffle through the papers, and then you look up. Oh yeah, you're in this unit, and this is your commander. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm sorry about him getting shot like that. Oh yeah, your other comrade. Yeah, he's wounded in the hospital, but we're taking care of him. Just wanted you to know. And another one, repetition approach. Probably not real effective on social engineering. You don't sit there and ask, whoever you're trying to gather information from the same question over and over and over again. It'll annoy them. They'll wonder, what's going on and why you're acting so weird. But in an interrogation situation is very applicable, but probably not so in social engineering. But try it. Who knows? It might work for you. Rapid fire approach is when you have multiple people, and this sometimes can work. If you have a lot of people that have approached a front desk, it can distract. It can cause a lot of confusion for the people at the front desk, and you'd be amazed at people that you could sneak around from a social engineering perspective, to get through that front gate and that desk and things like that. So that rapid fire approach can be effective in a social engineering setting if you plan it properly and execute it properly. But if imagine a source who've just been captured. Just basically having 3 or 4 people firing questions at him at one point in time, he or she is just going to be confused, dazed, and eventually just wears them down. And that's part of the goal, wear them down emotionally. Silent approach it can be very, very effective in an interrogation perspective. Don't see a lot of applicability here, with social engineering. You're not going to get a lot of information. You just sit there and be silent, whether you're at the front desk, in the receptionist's office, or on the phone. It's not going to be that effective. You can have those, what they call, pregnant pauses, where you're making them think, and that can be effective. But the silent approach here is you just sit across the interrogation table, and you're either not looking at the source for a long, long time, or you're looking directly at the source for a very long time, but you're not saying a word. And of course, their mind's just going crazy with what's going on, what's going to happen. I have no idea what this interrogator is trying to do. Change the scenery is very effective. You take a person, you still have a military policeman with you, but just say you take them out of the security compound. You walk them over, kind of see, a little different view. It kind of changes their perspective. They get out. They get to just take a walk. They're out of, their POW compound. So change the scenery can work, and it can work from a social engineering perspective as well. you're talking to someone and you come out, just, you know, if you watched Spy Games, but Robert Redford saying, hey, always keep a pack of cigarettes, a lighter, you know, because it's an easy way to start a conversation with someone. And, you know, you can walk someone outside while they're going to take a smoke break and begin, you know, your information there, gathering whatever you can, you know, in a different setting. You know, they feel less exposed. Yeah, they're more comfortable, and, you know, they don't have any other people around them that might hear what you're talking about. You guys have seen some of these, the Mutt and Jeff approach, or the good cop, bad cop. You've seen that done. The one really, someone's, you know, really being harsh with a source, and then someone comes in and breaks that up and says, hey, you know, you can't treat this guy like this, and moves in, and you know, they're being the nice cop, and you know, it's very effective. You can use this. You can definitely apply this to social engineering in situations where someone is leading in as a part of an overall social engineering exercise, and you're the one that kind of redeems and saves, you know, an individual, and you earn, you know, their respect, and build that rapport with them from, you know, being the one that rescued them from the bad person. False flag. Not a lot of applicability in some senses. I mean, you can it works. You know, of course, in interrogation settings, but not so much in the social engineering. I've never applied it in social engineering. Separation, of course, you guys have heard of that. Separation could be a positive thing or a negative thing. So in some instances, when, you know, you've heard of putting them in isolation, you know, it's very harsh treatment. Eventually, emotionally, you know, we love human interaction. It's a natural thing. If you don't have that, you know, it really wears you down emotionally. Physical separation is a part of that. And then field expedient separation is another drastic technique that, you know, we would apply, you know, in certain circumstances as well. Separation, you know, is a social engineering, you know, technique you can definitely use, whether you're in whatever setting, in the business setting, or if you're actually approaching someone that you've already done research on, and you know where they're doing their happy hour, and you make your approach then to initially, you know, gain familiarity and rapport, you know, with the source of information, and gain more information about their colleagues, but kind of separating them. So if you're asking intruding questions, or maybe, you know, corporate sensitive questions, you know, they'd be more inclined to provide that information for you. There's a lot of things they taught us during that 6-month training. That was a series of various questioning skills. And again, we do those 3-hour labs. We'd ask certain questions. They'd come back and say, you should have, you know, used this question. You should have tried this technique. And, you know, we'd have direct questions, indirect questions, closed questions, open questions, leading questions, and then something a lot of social engineers should, you know, take advantage of, control questions, verifying the information that someone may have told you. They may have told you something and you think it's correct, but they may have misspoke, forgot, and then, suddenly as you keep talking, it comes back to them. And so a control question is always a good thing to verify and validate information. Listening, of course, is paramount. You have to listen to what your source is saying, and the inflection of their voice. And this is the same thing, you know, in social engineering. I'm more adept at person-to-person social engineering. I haven't practiced. I'm decent at phone, but I'm not as good as some of these guys by any means. I just haven't done it enough, because I like that contact. I like to see them. I like to know and understand where they're coming from, when they feel uncomfortable, when I'm making them feel good. It's easier for me. I'm decent, but not as good as these guys. I just don't have enough practice. But these are different type of listening techniques: dialogic, critical, emotional. And then the biggest thing that they beat into us in school is attention to detail, the littlest detail. And you'd be in a situation, and they have these scenarios that they've been going through for years and years and years, and they know there's just one piece of voice inflection or one movement, a facial movement. And, if I didn't catch that, they'd tell me, like, you missed that. If you'd have gone that, then the role, he would have gone in this other direction, and I would have had the information faster. Sometimes you go back and, I get the information, but they were like, yeah, you should have been done in, an hour and a half. And you went almost, 2.5 hours because you missed this one clue. And then covers. Covers are just one of the easiest ways, to gain information. Many times, I wouldn't walk in, to the PW compound or the interrogation booth. I would, as your interrogator, how are you? I would come in as someone else. I might come in as the UN. I might come in as, another, as Humana, a humanitarian organization, and say, hi, I'm with United Nations, and we're investigating, the treatment of POWs here in this situation. I want to find out what's going on, so if you would please tell me about yourself. And they would be like, I said, I can help you out, and then we're going to get you out of here. Of course, I'm lying my ass off. But, I'm the UN guy, and that's what they think. So we play a lot of different roles. Priests, doctors, a lot of things. And just basically lie to them to gain that, get the information out of them, because they don't think I'm an interrogator. They think I'm someone else trying to help them out. Of course, props, costumes for all those roles we would use. Stress positions. You guys probably heard about these a little bit in the news. We would do this once in a while. The ones we would apply, so I worked a lot in the Middle East and Africa. So just putting someone outside in the sun and having them stand in a certain position for, you'd be amazed, if you put someone in a certain position, just how tired their legs get. And they just start wobbling, and they're in the hot sun. And then you bring them, the most, we would do, usually, it wouldn't take long because, it's 120 degrees out there. We'd be like 15 minutes. And then we, because we didn't want any heat, we didn't want anything to die. Okay, you're not going to get information out of a dead person. So we didn't want anyone to die. So if you see kind of the correlation, I'm hoping you're seeing, what I saw 7-8 years ago as I saw this as a potential threat to the companies that I consulted with. There's objectives for both match in that they're trying to obtain information. Techniques match, there's lying, there's deception. Besides being, attention to detail, planted in us, being sincere and convincing, which is exactly what a social engineer does. Like Chris is saying, don't ever go out of pretext. Stay there. Just, hey, this is what I am. This is my role. This is what I'm trying to do here. And I don't know what the problem is. And training you to be sincere and convincing was, one of the most important rules that they made us abide by. We want to build rapport with whoever we're trying to get information from. We want them to have confidence in us. And so there's complete overlap there with social engineering and interrogation techniques. A lot of the methods overlap, a lot of the approaches overlap. So that was kind of the whole gist of, why I wanted to come here and share with you and hopefully get feedback and input on what you think about how the Army trained me as an interrogator, which is a little bit different than how they're training today, but still pretty much everything the same. Lying, big deception, building rapport, questioning techniques and style, reading your source or target's body language, attitudes, emotions, kind of having that sixth sense, pretexting, cover stories, all are things that, overlap between social engineering and interrogation. Lying. I guess first raised. I'm an ordained Mormon priest. I'm an Aaronic priest according to the Mormon Church. But I left them when I was 13, but still had some Judeo-Christian faith and background. So lying really wasn't something that was very conducive to the way I was raised. But I learned to adapt to it very quickly. But sometimes it really got the best, because I'd be dating someone and I'd go into cover and pretext, and I'd be like, holy shit, I just lied the crap out. And then I'd have to go back and cover myself later if the relationship turned into anything long term. So it's very interesting about lying, but it's just something that's at the heart of social engineering and what we need to do in order to get the information from people. Building rapport is critical. Whether you're lying or not, you're just trying to build rapport. And once you gain that confidence, once you get that, the faster you get that rapport, the faster you'll get the information. And you do whatever you need to do. One of the situations I was in when I was conducting a pen test for an organization, CEOs, of course, are very susceptible. They're getting better, but senior executives, they seem to think that they don't have to follow the security policies and IT security rules and things like that. So we conducted a test. We went after the CEO. We did initial research, found out, what he was going to be doing, where he was going to be. We knew he was going to be out of the office for a certain period of time, and so we planned this over about 2 weeks. When he was not in the office, we'd call his receptionist, and we basically started posing as his new father-in-law-to-be, whom she had never met. And he was completely busy with work, had no idea about what was going on with all the wedding plans, and basically went after the receptionist because we had heard in other engagements at some of the really swanky clubs in Washington, D.C., that, because he was a CEO, really had a bad memory problem, wrote down all his passwords. And one of the IT guys that we basically listened to, in a surreptitious way, as I might say, basically said, oh, yeah, he keeps him here in his desk. He goes, and I've told him 10 times if I've told him 20. So I walk in. I've called her up. I'm saying, hey, I know he's going to be back. I'm coming by the office to meet your CEO, and, I'm such and such. He's marrying, my son. Oh, great. So she's like, of course, all aflutter. And she goes, well, let me know when you get here. Okay. And, I'll just walk you right up. That'll be great. I'll let you know when I'm in reception. She was down there waiting for me in reception. Took to security and goes, he's going to see CEO. Oh, okay. Walk right past security. Of course, we were checking driver's licenses and all that stuff. She's just all about everything. So I'm kind of waiting about 5 minutes in a chair next to her, and I see she's busy, and I kind of look like I'm a little bored and, kind of flustered. I know he's not coming back for another hour and a half. She finally goes, would you like to wait in his office? He was like, yes. Oh, that would be awesome. Then I don't want to disturb you anymore. So we get in the office. She leaves me in there all by myself, walk over to the desk, take a picture of the information of all the passwords, and then proceed to log in as him on his computer to download a couple of pieces of information, as evidence that, we breached them. I really felt bad when he did the after action, because she felt horrible. All she could think of was how excited, she was going to meet the new father-in-law, and this big wedding's coming. And of course, the mom is doing all these wedding plans and stuff like that. And she's just, trying to help her out with his schedule. and just would love me walking in there and getting a chance to meet me. And, again, lying, kind of something, if you have a conscience, sometimes you kind of feel bad afterwards. But again, it was, I really feel, she was just so excited to bring me up, and it was like, she just walked me right into his office. So, building rapport, was really important. And being sincere and convincing. Of course, you all understand, the pretexting portions of this, developing, a scenario, doing your planning and prep and your recon, using as much open source information as you can, or using other steps to target people in order to accomplish what your overall goal is. We use the same techniques as interrogators, just, it's a little bit different. We're looking at personality types just as you are. We're looking at emotional states of mind. And, baiting also is a classic technique that, you're all aware of as a social engineer. We've covered this. There's some differences, of course, are the target for a social engineer, isn't in a POW compound and isn't being forced to give information. So they're not held against their will. They're not under major emotional duress. And the source actually may have training, on resistance techniques. So it's a little bit different. Most targets for social engineers, most of them, which goes back to the whole purpose of this, is the education of this on how to resist these types of things. Let me get here. So we're promoting big-time cyber SEER programs, social engineering, resistance, and evasion, which basically deal with security policy enforcement, awareness training, building social engineering defense in your business architecture, in your security architecture, and then testing it. It's all great if you do this education, but if you don't test it, you can't confirm and validate that the learning is actually taking place. I had concluding thoughts, things I've already said, so let's jump to questions because I was flagged on 10 minutes to go. Any questions? No operational questions, please, about anything like that. Go ahead, sir.
How do some of the military trainings differ from some of the civil law enforcement interrogation, like some of the read techniques and some of the
There's a lot of
varied implementation.
A lot of the approaches still work. Mutt and Jeff, bad cop, good cop, emotional up and down, fear up, fear down. So law enforcement will use a lot of those same techniques. Of course, they have, if you're in the United States, you have rights. If you're in Morocco and it's completely different law enforcement style. So, but yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Either one?
Does it work? There we go.
Yeah.
So how can you tell if your subject is holding back information or legitimately doesn't know anything?
Yeah, that's always something you need to validate. So you might use different approaches with different interrogators, put them in a situation that they definitely don't want to be in for very long, and then change the approach. Maybe do a fear up approach with one interrogator, really scare the bejesus out of him, and then bring someone else in to comfort him, and then you can learn. Again, body language is critical. They can try the silent treatment on you, but it's one rule you guys should ever know: you cannot not be broken. Everyone breaks, and I learned that from some Israelis that were actually interrogated by the Russians. And they said, we broke. We were trained well. We were, and I'm trained well. We broke. So eventually, we're going to get the information. Sir?
Hi. So you mentioned interrogators' roles as input into psychological operations. I think the new PR term is strategic communication.
Yeah, it's not quite that. But
Okay.
it's something. Yeah, it's pretty much information. It's something information, and I forgot to look it up.
I was wondering if you could give examples of what it looks like to do that at scale, or what sort of information you would give, or what sort of input you'd give to those kind of at scale.
Yeah, so like on the positive side, like when we were in Mogadishu, we tried to go in there and be the nice people. Of course, we're bringing food and doing all this stuff. One of the things we did was we write cool little Arabic phrases, on fans that they could use to basically keep the flies off themselves and keep themselves cool. So
Sorry, I meant as an interrogator, what kind of input would an interrogator have?
Yeah, I would basically have knowing the culture, having the training.
I see.
I would tell them this is what works on a positive way. This does not work on a negative way. So they might do a really harsh campaign, drop a bunch of leaflets, do some serious radio broadcasting all over a place, telling them, hey, turn in your weapons or we're going to do this. And so that
If that's compelling to that specific type of target or culture.
Just depends.
Great.
Yeah, sometimes they would do nice things.
Thanks.
One of the missions I did was after Hurricane Andrews, because it obliterated everything. And so they sent me down there with a team, and we stood up a TV station, a radio station, and started printing out where all the water points are, where all the medical points were, and stuff like that. So good and bad use for psyops.
Thank you.
Sir?
Yeah, this question is in regards to role-playing and maintaining a backstop in your cover.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, when you're taking it
exactly.
that far away from the truth as posing as the target's father-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
The lid's gonna be blown the second the guy comes back into work.
Oh, yeah, no.
How do you work? How do you sort of? Are you considering that when you're building that backstory?
Always on that, but our approach there was to be in and out before he was ever there, and then come back and report to him, hey, you were breached, and guess what? You were the
Because
you were
that's
the vector.
basically that's a short game. That's not like.
Well, we had done a lot of work ahead of time, and if we didn't have someone actually watching exactly what meeting he was in at that point in time, and then signaling me, hey, he's coming in, then I would excuse myself. But we knew he was in a meeting for at least 2 more hours, and I had basically, my target was to be in his office within 30 minutes or less, and I got in within 15.
So you didn't have like a backstop there to sort of.
No,
save
not
her?
in that scenario. I would have just said, "What do you?" If she would have recognized something, I already had her, hook, line, and sinker when she escorted me up to the office. So I knew if I couldn't get to the office, if security stopped me at the gate, this is one thing too. If your security policy, I go and I show a business card like we were saying. That's not good enough. All right, I show a license, government ID. Okay, that's decent, but I can call Ross Upbrook up at, and he can get me a fake license, so I can use that. If you go to a state agency, they're going to write down the information. So if I go to the state of New York and walk into one of their IT groups, that security guard's not letting me leave until he writes down all my information. But I could still be wrong. He's just writing it down. If you go to a federal installation, they take your license. If it's fake, they're scanning it. They're looking, oh, this guy's from Idaho. Okay, well, guess what? No, this license isn't valid. So the level of security, of course, that costs a lot to scan every state and for every government ID possible. So if the security guard would have stopped me, that was where, I had, my backstop to, exfiltrate.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. Were there any materials, specifically like books or sources we could read that would be readily available to civilians that really helped you become a better interrogator and social engineer?
I can send those with Chris's permission, over to his website. The links to the PDFs on all the Army field manuals that they've been using over the last 15, 20 years.
Okay.
So I can get that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yes, sir.
All your experience and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
What would you say is your biggest weakness?
Don't answer that in DEFCON. Don't do it.
Carrot cake. Thank you guys so much. Did you have a question? Okay. Thank you again. Thank you. Okay, sir.
So, if your target caught on to what you're doing, like for instance that scenario that you talked about with the CEO, something similar,
Right.
what would you say would be the most common reaction you get from people when they figure out, or they start to figure out, or get information?
Well, normally because you need to understand what they know going into a situation like that and what they don't. Suspicion, can be raised. And, if something, bringing up what he said, if something with the receptionist waiting by her desk came up, and all of a sudden, I see signs from other people that look suspicious to me, there's always, hey, where's your restroom? I go, skip the restroom, head to the elevator and get out of there. Yes, sir.
So I have a question about genuine empathy and sociopathic tendencies, right? How do you prep up and then you prep going into this type of crime?
As a social engineer or as an interrogator?
Either, like you said, you went on dates.
Yeah, it just depends. Yeah, well, yeah, it does. Yeah, the techniques. But I've had a lot of ex-girlfriends that have said, dude, I didn't know you were like that, but there was something weird about you because you had these, like, you knew what I was going to do, and you asked questions, and then you asked follow-up questions, and it was like, I don't know how you figured that out. I'm like, yeah, well, it's just it's sixth sense.
Do you question your own sincerity at times?
Oh, I used to after I got out when I was much younger. Definitely. So I mean, I seriously, I'd go into a pretext. I'd be lying to, my parents, and girlfriends or whoever, because that was the training.
It becomes easy, right?
Oh yeah, no, the role playing the line was very. It took me a couple hard lessons to learn, the importance of truth. And you want great information, and you want it to be true. So you have to respect the truth, and you have to know why you're lying.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent job.